A frictional light streamed through the kitchen window, reflecting off the white countertop where Lindsay's coffee mug sat. She sat at the table, cupping the mug in her hands, watching the steam rise in thin spirals. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the toast she just toasted for Emily. Outside, suburban Omaha was waking up. A neighbor's lawnmower was humming, a dog was barking, and a school bus was rumbling down the street. Everything was the same as yesterday and the day before, and it seemed her entire life. Lindsay, 24, with her brown hair pulled back into a messy bun, felt older. Not because of the wrinkles her face still had the softness of youth, but because of the weariness that had settled deep inside. She glanced around the kitchen, the neat cabinets, the fridge magnets with pictures of her, Ethan, and Emily on a picnic. The house was cozy, like something out of a catalog. But Lindsay felt like the walls were closing in, cutting her off from a world she only saw through her phone. "Mommy, juice!" Emily's voice rang out from the living room. The 2-year-old sat on the carpet surrounded by plastic blocks, her curls bouncing as she built a wobbly tower. "Right away, honey," Lindsay said, standing up. She poured apple juice into a pink cup with a lid and handed it to her daughter. Emily grabbed the cup without looking up from the cubes, and Lindsay couldn't help but smile. Emily was her light, her joy. But even that love couldn't fill the emptiness that grew with each passing day. Lindsay walked back into the kitchen, picked up her phone, and opened her social media. Her fingers found the profile of Kelly, her friend from college. Kelly had moved to Las Vegas after graduation and was living her life in a movie. Her latest story showed her on top of a skyscraper in a sparkly dress, holding a glass of champagne. The lights of the strip sparkled behind her, and the caption read, "Just another night in paradise." Lindsay felt her heart clench. She imagined Kelly laughing in a crowd of beautiful people while she mopped up spilled juice and waited for the washing machine to finish its cycle. "Why am I not there?" she muttered, scrolling through another photo. Kelly in a convertible, her makeup perfect, next to her boyfriend who owned some club. Lindsay knew it wasn't the whole truth. Social media was a lie. But even that lie was better than her reality. She remembered dreaming of being an interior designer when she was 18. She'd sketched and flipped through magazines, imagining herself creating spaces where people felt alive. But then Ethan had come along with his steady gaze and promise of stability. They'd married when she was 20, and Emily had been born a year later. School was a thing of the past, as were her dreams. Now her world was a suburb of Omaha, where the biggest thing that ever happened was the opening of a new coffee shop on the corner. The door slammed and Marge, a neighbor whose habit of entering without knocking irritated Lindsay, walked into the kitchen. "Good morning, dear," Marge sang, setting a basket of homemade cookies on the table. Her gray hair was pulled back into a neat bun, and her apron smelled of vanilla. "I thought I'd bring you a treat. Ethan loves my oatmeal cookies, doesn't he?" Lindsay forced a smile. "Thank you, Marge. That's very sweet." "Oh, it's nothing." Marge waved her hand and sat down at the table without asking permission. "How are you? You look so pale today. Are you not getting enough sleep?" Emily was cranky all night again. "No, she slept fine," Lindsay replied, trying not to sound annoyed. "It's just like any other morning." "Oh, honey, I know what it's like." Marge lowered her voice, as if sharing a secret. "When my Tom was little, I struggled too. But you're doing great, and Ethan is such a wonderful husband. I saw him mowing the lawn yesterday. Not every man takes such good care of the house." Lindsay nodded, but inside she was seething. She wanted to scream that she didn't want to hear how wonderful Ethan was, that she was suffocating in this house, in this suburb, in this life where she was praised for simply existing. But instead she said, "Yes, he tries." Marge smiled, clearly pleased. "That's right. Stick with him, Lindsay. Ethan's kind aren't rare. Look at Mrs. Clark's daughter. She's divorced. Now she's alone with 2 kids, and no one will take her." Lindsay gripped her mug so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I know, Marge. Thanks for the cookies." When the neighbor left, Lindsay let out a sigh. She hated this conversation, hated how everyone reminded her how lucky she was. Lucky to be Ethan's wife, Emily's mother, a landlord with a mortgage. But where was she in all of this? The day dragged on. Lindsay took Emily to kindergarten, where the teacher, Miss Abbott, chatted cheerfully about how Emily had drawn the cutest flower. Lindsay smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. She cleaned the house, folded the laundry, cooked dinner chicken and potatoes, Ethan's favorite. It all felt mechanical, like she was acting in someone else's play. Ethan returned at 6 o'clock. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his shirt smelled of construction site dust. He dropped his briefcase by the door and smiled when he saw Lindsay. "Hello, honey," he said, kissing her cheek. "It smells delicious. Is Emily home yet?" "Yeah, he's in the living room, playing," Lindsay replied, chopping a salad. "How's your day?" Ethan sat down at the table, undoing his tie. "Fine. Today we signed a contract for a new bridge across the river. Big project will keep us busy for a couple of years. The boss is happy and says a bonus is on the horizon." "Great," Lindsay said, but her voice was empty. She set the plate in front of him and sat down across from him, watching him eat. "How are you?" Ethan asked, chewing. "What's new?" Lindsay shrugged. "Nothing much. Daycare, cleaning. Marge stopped by with some cookies." "Oh, her oatmeal?" Ethan perked up. "We should get a couple. She's a good girl, always spoiling us." "Yeah," Lindsay said, picking at her food with her fork. She wanted to talk about Kelly, about her stories, about how she wanted to get away. But she knew Ethan wouldn't understand. He'd start talking about bills, about Emily, about how life isn't a movie. "Listen," Ethan said suddenly, putting down his fork. "I was thinking maybe this weekend we could go to that new place on the corner. I hear they have pretty good burgers. We'll take Emily and have a family day out." Lindsay looked at him. His eyes were hopeful, as if burgers could fix everything. She felt a pang of guilt, but it was followed by irritation. "Maybe," she answered evasively. "I'll think about it." Ethan frowned. "Lindsay, are you okay? You've been kind of distant lately. If something's wrong, tell me." She pressed her lips together. She wanted to scream, "This is wrong. I don't want burgers and family days. I want to live, not just exist." But instead she said, "I'm just tired, Ethan. Emily, the house, all of this. It's exhausting." He nodded, but his eyes were wary. "I understand. Maybe you need a day off. I can take the day off, babysit Emily, and you can go out with your friends or to the spa." "Spa," Lindsay snorted, unable to contain herself. "Are you serious? You think a manicure will solve everything?" Ethan blinked, clearly confused. "I'm just trying to help. What do you want, Lindsay? Tell me, I'll do it." She looked at him, at his kind eyes, at his tired smile, and felt something inside her break. He was a good man, but he wasn't the one who could give her the life she dreamed of. "It's nothing," she said quietly. "Forget it." Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but Emily ran into the kitchen holding a cube. "Dad, look, I built a house," she screamed, jumping on the spot. Ethan caught her, laughing. "Wow, that's cool. You're a future architect, aren't you?" Lindsay watched them, feeling out of place. She stood up to clear away the dishes, but her mind was elsewhere. She imagined Kelly dancing under the neon lights, and herself not here, not in this kitchen, but somewhere where she could breathe. Later, when Emily had fallen asleep and Ethan was watching the news, Lindsay opened her phone again. A new photo of Kelly at a restaurant overlooking the sunset, surrounded by people who looked like they were from a magazine. Lindsay texted her, "You look amazing. How do you do it?" Kelly responded almost immediately, "Just living, my friend. Come to Vegas. I'll show you what it's like. You deserve better than Omaha." Lindsay stared at the message, her heart racing. She looked at Ethan napping on the couch, their house full of things that should have made her happy. But they didn't. She closed her eyes, imagining herself in a dress like Kelly's, in a town where no one knew her as Ethan's wife or Emily's mom, where she could just be Lindsay. "I deserve better," she whispered, and the words hung in the air like a promise, or like a sentence. Lindsay was standing at the sink, scraping dried sauce off a pot, when her phone vibrated on the counter. The screen lit up, revealing a name, Kelly. Lindsay's heart sank. She wiped her hands on a towel, glancing at the living room where Emily was playing with her dolls, humming under her breath. Ethan hadn't returned from work yet, and the house was silent except for the creaking of the old wood floors. Lindsay grabbed the phone and answered, pressing it to her ear. "Lindsay, my friend, how long are you going to hide out in this wilderness?" Kelly's voice was clear, as if she was calling from a party. There was noise in the background music, laughter, the clink of glasses. "Seriously, Omaha, are you terrified yet?" Lindsay couldn't help but smile, but it was bitter. "Hey, Kel, not everyone can live in Vegas, you know. Some of us are stuck in the real world." "The real world?" Kelly snorted. "You mean your laundry and Emily's mashed potatoes? Look, Lindsay, you're 24, not 60. It's time to remember who you really are. Come over to my place for the weekend. I'll show you how to live." Lindsay froze, holding the towel. Her gaze fell on the kitchen table, littered with bills and Emily's childhood drawings. Outside the window, suburban Omaha stretched out. Neat houses, manicured lawns, and ice cream trucks slowly crawling down the street. This was her life, safe, predictable, suffocating. And Kelly's voice was like a wind from another world, where people didn't budget for the month. "Kel, I can't just up and leave," Lindsay said, but her voice was shaking. "I have Emily, Ethan, things to do." "Business," Kelly interrupted. "Lindsay, you deserve a break. Leave Emily with your parents and tell Ethan you need a few days to yourself. It's not a crime, you know. Come over and let's hang out like old times. Remember how we used to rock in college? You were the life of the party." Lindsay closed her eyes, and the memories came flooding back. She and Kelly, 19, dancing in a frat bar, laughing at silly jokes, dreaming of a big future. Back then, Lindsay had believed she would become a designer, living in New York or Los Angeles, creating spaces that would be featured in magazines. But then Ethan proposed, and her dreams dissolved into promises of stability. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "But it's not that simple." "Easy," Kelly laughed. "Lindsay, life is not about easy. It's about seizing opportunities. I'm booking you a ticket for Friday, and don't argue. You'll thank me later." The call ended and Lindsay stood there, staring at the phone. Her fingers were shaking. She pictured herself in Las Vegas, neon, music, freedom. But then an image of Emily popped into her head, her curls, her questions. "Mommy, where are you going?" And Ethan, with his tired smile, who would probably say that this was a stupid idea. She remembered their wedding 4 years ago. She was 20, standing in a white dress, looking at Ethan, who had promised her the world. His eyes had shone when he said they would build a home, a family, a future. Lindsay had believed him. But instead of the world, he had given her suburban Omaha, a mortgage, and a routine that left her suffocated. Somewhere deep inside, she knew it was unfair to blame him. But that knowledge only made her anger grow. The door slammed and Ethan walked in, dusting his boots. His shirt was slightly wrinkled, and he was carrying a briefcase that looked older than their marriage. "Hello, darling," he said, smiling. "Where's Emily?" "In the living room," Lindsay replied, returning to the saucepan. "Dinner's almost ready." Ethan walked over and hugged her from behind, but she tensed. He sensed it and stepped back, frowning. "Everything okay?" he asked, opening the fridge for a beer. "You seem kind of out of sorts." Lindsay pressed her lips together. She wanted to brush it off, to say it was okay, like she had done hundreds of times. But Kelly's words echoed in her head. "You deserve better." "Ethan," she began, turning to face him. "Kelly called. She wants me to come to Las Vegas for the weekend." Ethan froze, holding the bottle. His eyebrows rose. "Las Vegas? Why?" "Just chill," Lindsay shrugged, trying to sound casual. Spend time with a friend. I haven't been out in a while. He set his beer down on the table, crossing his arms. Lindsay, we have a baby. You have a lot going on. What, you're just going to drop everything for some party? This isn't a party, she snapped, feeling the blood rush to her cheeks. It's been a couple of days, Ethan. I'm not leaving forever. But why do you need this? His voice became harsher. We have a normal life. Emily, the house, me. Isn't that enough? Or do you need a casino and cocktails to feel happy? Lindsay gritted her teeth. His words were right on target, but not in the way he thought. She didn't want a casino. She wanted to feel alive, not an actress in his normal life. You don't understand, she said, turning back to the sink. I just want a little freedom. Freedom? Ethan snorted. Lindsay, that sounds stupid. You're not a student. We have a family, commitments. Or have you forgotten? No, I haven't forgotten. She turned sharply, her voice breaking. I live by these obligations every day. Maybe you forgot that I'm not only a mother and a wife. I'm a person too, Ethan. He looked at her, stunned. Emily, hearing the scream, ran into the kitchen, holding the doll. Mommy, don't be angry, she said, her eyes filling with tears. Lindsay dropped to her knees, hugging her daughter. I'm sorry, honey. It's okay. Go play, okay? Emily nodded and ran away, and Lindsay stood up, tears stinging her eyes. Ethan was silent, but his gaze was heavy. Do what you want, he finally said, taking the beer. But don't complain if it turns into trouble. He went into the living room, leaving Lindsay alone. She looked at the pot, at her shaking hands, and knew there was no turning back. She couldn't pretend to be happy anymore. The next day, Lindsay called her parents. Her mother, Elaine, agreed to take Emily for the weekend, but not without a lecture. Lindsay, are you sure? Elaine's voice was full of reproach. You have a wonderful family. Ethan is so reliable, and Emily needs you. What do you need Las Vegas for? It's a place for irresponsible people who don't appreciate what they have. Lindsay clutched the phone. Mom, I'm not abandoning my family. It's just the weekend. I need to rest. You can relax at home, Elaine snapped. You think it was easy for me to raise you and your brother. I didn't run around partying. Family is about sacrifice, Lindsay. I know, Lindsay closed her eyes, holding back her anger. But I'm not you. I'll bring Emily tomorrow. She hung up, feeling both guilty and relieved. Her mother had always seen the world in black and white, family or selfishness, no gray areas. But Lindsay didn't want to sacrifice herself. Not anymore. That evening, she opened her laptop and bought a ticket for Friday. The price made her heart clench. It was the money she and Ethan had been saving to fix the roof. But she pressed confirm, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. She imagined Kelly waiting for her at the airport, and herself in her new dress, under the neon lights, where no one knew her as Emily's mom. Packing her suitcase became a ritual. Lindsay pulled out jeans and t-shirts, but she stopped. These were Omaha clothes, the clothes of a wife and mother. She rummaged through her closet and found an old dress, a black, form-fitting one from before her wedding. It was a bit tight, but when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see the tired Lindsay, but the girl who once dreamed of conquering the world. She folded the dress into her suitcase, adding a pair of heels she hadn't worn in years. Ethan was silent all evening, but his silence was louder than words. When Lindsay put Emily to bed, her daughter hugged her. Mommy, are you leaving? Emily asked, her voice sleepy. Just for a couple of days, honey, Lindsay kissed her forehead. You'll be with your grandparents, and then I'll come back and we'll go to the park, okay? Emily nodded, but her eyes were sad. Lindsay felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it away. She deserved this. She couldn't be a mother forever. In the morning, she drove Emily to her parents. Elaine greeted her with pursed lips, but said nothing. Lindsay kissed Emily, got into the car, and drove to the airport. Her suitcase lay in the back seat, and her chest pounded. Something knew a mixture of fear and hope. The Omaha airport was quiet. Lindsay checked in, clutching her ticket. She looked around at the people around her. Businessmen with laptops, families with children, an elderly couple holding hands. They all seemed part of the world she was leaving behind. When the boarding call came, Lindsay stood, her heels clicking on the floor. She walked onto the plane, sat by the window, and looked out at the gray Omaha sky. The plane touched down, and Lindsay felt her heart leap. Outside the window, the lights of Las Vegas sparkled neon arrows, flashing signs, jeweled skyscrapers. This wasn't the gray suburbs of Omaha, not her kitchen with the smell of chicken soup. This was another world, and she was entering it for the first time in years. Lindsay adjusted the strap of her bag and stepped out into the McCarran Airport terminal. The air was warm, with a slight hint of dust and gasoline. People were moving around quickly, couples in bright shirts, men in suits, girls in dresses that made Lindsay feel like a mouse in her jeans and white t-shirt. She nervously smoothed her hair, looking out over the crowd, looking for Kelly. "Lindsay," a familiar voice called out, and Kelly appeared as if she had stepped out of a magazine. Her blonde hair shone under the lights, and her black dress hugged her like a second skin. She rushed toward Lindsay, hugging her so tightly that Lindsay almost choked on the scent of her perfume suite with a hint of jasmine. "God, Kel, you look like a star," Lindsay breathed, pulling back to look at her friend. Kelly smiled, her eyes sparkling like the lights outside the window. "And you look like you just escaped from Omaha," Kelly winked, looking over her outfit. "But that's okay, we'll fix that. Let's go, friend, your new world awaits." Kelly grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the exit. There was a white convertible parked at the curb, shiny as a toy. Lindsay froze, feeling like a movie heroine. "Is this your car?" she asked, sitting down on the leather seat. "A gift from Marcus," Kelly said casually, starting the engine. "He said I should drive in style. Well, who am I to argue?" Lindsay laughed, but a twinge of envy swelled in her chest. Kelly's boyfriend, Marcus, owned a nightclub and, from what she'd heard, showered her with gifts. Ethan had never given Lindsay anything like that. His idea of class was coffee in bed on Sundays or a coupon for a pizza place. As they sped down the strip, Lindsay couldn't take her eyes off the city. The casinos sparkled like Christmas trees. The golden towers of the Bellagio, the Luxor Pyramid, the neon waves of the Cosmopolitan. Buskers played saxophone, tourists took pictures by fountains, and the air hummed with laughter and energy. Lindsay felt her skin tingle, as if she were waking up from a long sleep. "This is incredible," she whispered, looking at Kelly. "How did you get used to this?" "Got used to it," Kelly laughed, her earrings swinging. "Lindsay, I'm not getting used to it. I'm living, and you will be too, I promise." They pulled up to the hotel, a glass tower with gold lettering on the front. Kelly tossed her keys to the doorman, who called her Miss Kelly, and led Lindsay into the elevator. The suite on the 30th floor was a dream. Huge windows overlooking the strip, white couches, a bar with crystal glasses. Lindsay set her bag on the floor, afraid of getting anything dirty. "Kel, this is too," she began, but Kelly interrupted. "No too much," she said, opening the closet. "You're in Vegas now, my friend, and you need a new look. Here you go." Kelly pulled out a dress, silver, low-cut, shimmering like a mermaid's scales. Lindsay touched the fabric, feeling her fingers tremble. "I can't wear this," she said, shaking her head. "It's not me. I'm Mom from Omaha, Kel." "Omaha Mom," Kelly rolled her eyes. "Lindsay, you're a woman who deserves to shine. Forget about mashed potatoes and a mortgage for 2 days. Put this on and see who you really are." Lindsay wanted to protest, but something in Kelly's voice, the confidence, almost a command, made her take the dress. She went into the bathroom, changed, and looked in the mirror. The dress hugged her figure, emphasizing the curves she'd forgotten about since Emily's birth. Her hair, loose, fell over her shoulders, and in that moment she didn't see Ethan's tired wife in the reflection. She saw a girl who could conquer this city. "What did I tell you?" Kelly whistled as Lindsay walked out. "You're hot, girlfriend. Now let's get something to eat and then hit the club tonight." They went down to the restaurant on the hotel's first floor. The room was full of light, crystal chandeliers, mirrored walls, tables covered with white tablecloths. The waiter, a young guy with a tattoo on his wrist, smiled at Kelly as if she were an old friend. "Miss Kelly, your table is ready," he said, leading them to a window overlooking the fountains. "Marcus called earlier to tell us to spoil you." "Thanks, Jake," Kelly winked. "Bring us a bottle of that pink I like, and a menu for my friend, she's new in town." Lindsay sat up, feeling out of place. The people around her looked like they belonged in this world. Women in designer dresses, men with watches that cost more than her car. She looked at the menu, where the prices made her heart clench. "Kel, this is madness," she whispered. "I can't afford a dinner like this." "Relax," Kelly waved her hand. "Marcus is treating you. Just enjoy it. Look, that DJ from last week is sitting over there, and there's a producer in the corner, filming a show for Netflix." Lindsay turned her head, trying to spot the celebrities, but all she saw was a world where she didn't belong. Kelly was chatting with Jake, laughing, calling him honey, and Lindsay suddenly felt small. She thought of Emily, her curls, her voice. "Mommy, are you leaving?" Guilt pricked her, but Lindsay pushed the thought aside. She wasn't here to think about home. She was here to live. "Hey, where are you?" Kelly snapped her fingers in front of her face. "Don't sweat it, Lindsay. You're in Vegas, not at a Tom meeting. Tell me, how's Omaha? Is Ethan still mowing the lawn like a hero?" Lindsay chuckled, but her smile was strained. "Yeah, and she's planning the coffee shop like it's the event of the year." "Oh God," Kelly rolled her eyes. "Look, I don't mean to be offensive, but Ethan, he's like a toaster. Reliable, but boring. You need someone who lights a fire in you, you know? Someone who shows you the world." "Maybe you're right," Lindsay said quietly, looking out the window at the fountains. "But we have Emily, and the house, and all this." "Emily will be fine," Kelly snapped. "And the house, it's just walls. You don't want to wake up in 20 years and realize you missed out on life, do you?" Lindsay was silent, sipping the wine Jake had brought her. Her thoughts were in a tangle. She loved Emily more than anything in the world, but Kelly was right. She didn't want to be the woman who regretted things that didn't happen. She thought back to her wedding with Ethan, his promises, and how quickly they had become routine. Maybe she really did deserve more. The dinner was a dream. Lobster, a salad with truffle oil, a dessert that looked like a work of art. Lindsay ate slowly, trying not to think about how much it cost. Kelly chattered about Marcus, about parties, about plans for the night. Lindsay nodded, but her thoughts kept drifting to Omaha, to Ethan, who was probably having dinner with Emily at her parents'. She felt a twinge of guilt, but quickly shook it off. This was her time. That evening, they returned to the suite to get ready for the club. Kelly turned on the music, poured champagne, and the room filled with laughter. She helped Lindsay apply makeup and styled her hair into soft waves. "Look at you," Kelly said, pushing her toward the mirror. "This is the real Lindsay, not the one washing socks in Omaha." Lindsay looked at her reflection. Silver dress, smoky eyes, heels. She didn't recognize herself. But she liked this stranger. She felt young, free, ready for something more. "Kel, thank you," she said, hugging her friend. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Just be yourself," Kelly said, raising her glass. "And stick with me. We're gonna rock Vegas tonight, my friend." Lindsay smiled, feeling her heart beat faster. Lindsay stepped into the club and was immediately overwhelmed by the rhythm. Bass pounded the floor like a giant's heartbeat, and beams of light red, blue, gold cut the air like lasers. The crowd moved as one, bodies glistening with sweat, and the air smelled of alcohol, perfume, and something vaguely electric. Lindsay clutched her purse, feeling the silver dress cling to her skin. She was in Las Vegas, in the heart of the night, and yet part of her wanted to hide. Kelly, on the other hand, was in her element. Her black dress sparkled with sequins, her heels clicking to the beat. She grabbed Lindsay's hand, dragging her through the crowd to the VIP area, where the bartender was already mixing cocktails. "Welcome to my world, friend," Kelly shouted over the music. "Today, you're not an Omaha mom. Tonight, you're a queen." Lindsay smiled, but her heart was pounding. She looked around the club, the huge dance floor, the DJ booth surrounded by smoke, the girls in dresses that barely covered their thighs, the men whose eyes slid over the crowd like they were window shopping. It was so far from her kitchen, from Ethan reading the news, from Emily sleeping with her teddy bear. Lindsay inhaled, trying to push thoughts of home away. She was here to live, she reminded herself. Kelly thrust a cocktail into her hand, something pink, with a wedge of lime. "Drink this, Lindsay. Relax. You're standing there like you're in an exam." "I just—" Lindsay hesitated, taking a sip. The drink was sweet, with a slight bitterness. "It's all so loud. I'm not used to it." "Not used to it." Kelly laughed, her earrings swinging. "Girl, you just forgot what it's like to be young. Drink, dance, flirt. You didn't come to a monastery." Lindsay nodded, but her gaze wandered around the room. She felt out of place, as if Kelly's dress and makeup were a mask for the same Lindsay from Omaha to hide behind. She remembered the way Ethan had looked at her before he left, his silent judgment. "This is a stupid idea," he'd said. Maybe he was right. But then Kelly pulled her toward the dance floor, and her thoughts disappeared into the rhythm. They danced, and Lindsay began to let go of the tension. The music flowed into her, making her move, forget. Kelly twirled around them, laughing, drawing their gazes. Lindsay felt almost free, almost the girl she had been before marriage, before Emily, before the mortgage. But everything changed when she noticed him. He stood at the DJ booth, tall, with dark hair falling into his eyes. His tattooed hands moved over the equipment, manipulating the rhythm like a wizard. Lindsay froze, unable to look away. He wasn't just handsome, he had an energy, a magnetism that drew everyone around him. Kelly followed her gaze and smirked. "This is Justin," she said, leaning toward Lindsay's ear. "Local star. DJ who's been blowing up the clubs. Want to meet him?" "No, what are you saying?" Lindsay blushed, looking away. "I was just looking." "Yeah, sure," Kelly winked. "Let's go have another drink, and then we'll see." They returned to the VIP area, and Lindsay tried to focus on her cocktail, but her eyes kept drifting back to Justin. He finished his set, stepped down from the decks, and the crowd parted as if for a king. Kelly waved at him, and to Lindsay's horror, he walked toward them. "Kelly, you're always so hot," he said, his voice low and slightly husky. He smiled, and Lindsay felt her cheeks heat up. "Justin, this is Lindsay, my best friend." Kelly nudged her. "It's her first time in Vegas, so show her how much fun we have here." Lindsay forced a smile, feeling like a schoolgirl. "Hey, cool set." "Thanks," Justin looked at her, and his gaze was so direct that Lindsay wanted to sink into the ground. "New in town, huh? What brings you to Vegas?" She opened her mouth to answer, but the words stuck. Tell the truth, that she was an Omaha mom who had escaped the grind. No, that was too pathetic. She straightened up, trying to sound confident. "Just searching for myself," she said, feeling the lie burning her tongue. "I wanted to see something new." Justin nodded, his eyes narrowing as if he could see right through her. "Finding yourself is cool. Vegas is the perfect place for it. You can be whoever you want to be here." "Yeah," Lindsay took a sip of her cocktail to hide her nervousness. "And you, have you been here long?" "A couple of years," he shrugged, but there was pride in his voice. "Moved from Chicago, started in little bars, and now this," he gestured at the club. "This is my home." Kelly giggled. "Justin, don't be modest. You know half the girls are here for you." He chuckled, but his gaze returned to Lindsay. "And you, Lindsay, what do you love, besides finding yourself?" She hesitated. What did she like? Cooking dinner for Ethan? Reading stories to Emily? That wouldn't do. She thought of her old sketches, her dreams of design. "I love creating something beautiful," she said, surprised at her own boldness. I used to draw interiors. I dreamed of decorating houses, hotels, something that inspires. Cool, Justin leaned closer, and Lindsay caught a whiff of his cologne woody with a hint of citrus. You know, you look like someone who deserves more than just dreams. Vegas is where dreams come true. Her heart began to pound. His words echoed thoughts she was afraid to say. She wanted to answer, but Kelly interrupted. Justin, don't start your tricks, she laughed, but there was a slight edge to her voice. Lindsay, he's a master of beautiful words, but you know how it works. Oh, Kelly, give a man a chance, Justin winked, but his gaze remained on Lindsay. What do you say, Lindsay? Want to dance? She froze. Dance? With him? Her last dance had been a slow dance with Ethan at her wedding, but something in his smile, his confidence, made her nod. Okay, she said, setting the cocktail on the table. But I'm not a pro. You don't have to be a pro, he extended his hand. Just be yourself. Lindsay took his hand, feeling her fingers tremble. They stepped onto the dance floor, and the music consumed them. Justin moved easily, his tattoos flashing in the strobe lights. Lindsay tried to keep up, feeling the rhythm seep into her. She forgot about her awkwardness, about being a mom, a wife, about her life back in Omaha. Here, under the neon lights, she was just a woman, desirable, alive. They danced, and Lindsay felt his hand on her waist, a light but firm touch. She looked into his eyes, and for a second she thought he saw her, not the mask, not the dress, but the real Lindsay, the one who wanted more. You're not like the others, he said, leaning into her ear to be heard over the music. You have a fire. Don't let it go out. She smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Thank you. I forgot what it was like to burn. The song ended, and they returned to the VIP area where Kelly was chatting with a guy in a leather jacket. Justin pulled out his phone. Give me your number, he said, looking at Lindsay. I want to show you Vegas at more than just nighttime. Lindsay hesitated. The number? It was too real. She thought of Ethan, of Emily, but then she remembered his words, you deserve better. She gave the number, feeling her old world crumbling at the seams. See you around, Lindsay. Justin smiled and walked to the console where his fans were waiting. Kelly jumped up to her, her eyes sparkling. You're amazing, Justin. Seriously? It's just a dance, Lindsay shrugged, but her cheeks were burning. Dancing, yeah, Kelly narrowed her eyes. Look, it's cool, but it's not for anything serious, you know. Justin's like Vegas. Flashy, but not permanent. Just have fun, but don't fall in love, okay? I'm not going to, Lindsay replied, but her voice was unsure. Looked at the dance floor, where Justin was already laughing with another girl. Kelly was right, but Lindsay didn't want to listen. She wanted to feel that fire, even if it burned. They drank more, danced, laughed, and the night became a kaleidoscope of light and sound. Lindsay felt alive, as if someone had wiped the dust off her soul. But somewhere deep, beneath the euphoria, there was a shadow and image of Emily, her voice, her home. Lindsay pushed it away, raising her glass. This was her night, her chance, and she wasn't going to waste it. The plane landed in Omaha with a thud, and Lindsay felt her heart tighten. The sky outside was gray, dotted with low clouds, and the airport terminal looked as bleak as an abandoned warehouse. No neon lights, no crowds of sparkly dresses, just tired passengers and the smell of cheap coffee from a vending machine. Lindsay adjusted the strap of her bag, feeling the silver dress, neatly folded at the bottom of her suitcase, weighing on her like a reminder of another life. She walked through the turnstile, and her gaze immediately found Ethan. He was standing at the exit, holding Emily's hand, her curls bouncing as she pulled him toward the candy display. Ethan looked the same as always. Dark shirt, slightly wrinkled, hair touched by construction dust, and that smile of his, warm but wary. Lindsay slowed, feeling like an outsider. Just 3 days ago, she'd been dancing under the neon lights with Justin, and now she was returning to a world where the biggest adventure was grocery shopping. Mommy, Emily pulled away from Ethan's hand and ran to Lindsay, hugging her knees. Lindsay sank down, holding her daughter close, inhaling the scent of her shampoo, apple baby shampoo. "Hi, honey," she said, kissing Emily on the top of her head. "Missed you." "Did you bring me a gift?" Emily looked at her with wide eyes, and Lindsay felt a pang of guilt. She had been so busy in Vegas that she hadn't thought about souvenirs. "I'll bring some next time, okay?" Lindsay forced a smile as she stood up. Ethan came over, his eyes wary. "Hello," he said, taking her suitcase. "How was your flight?" "Fine," Lindsay shrugged, avoiding his eyes. "A little tired." Ethan nodded, but his silence was heavy. They walked to the car, Emily chatting about her grandmother baking cookies, and Lindsay felt her thoughts slipping away to Vegas. She thought of the club, the music, Justin, his tattoos, his words, "You deserve better." Her phone vibrated in her pocket, and she stole a glance at the screen. A text from Justin, a video from the studio where he was spinning records with the caption, "Been thinking about you. Vegas just isn't the same without you." Lindsay clutched the phone, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. In the car, Ethan turned on the radio, but Lindsay was barely listening. She looked out the window at the familiar streets of Omaha, the bungalows, the supermarket signs, the school bus flashing yellow. Everything was the same, but she was different. The dress, the dance, Justin's gaze, it was like a dream, but he was more real than this car, this city, this man next to her. So, Ethan cleared his throat, interrupting her thoughts. "How's Vegas going? Is Kelly still living like a rock star?" Lindsay tensed. His tone was light, but there was something else in it, resentment, maybe, or sarcasm. She turned to him, clutching her seatbelt. "It was fun," she said, trying to sound neutral. "Kelly knows how to put on a show. Restaurants, clubs, everything is so colorful." "Clubs," Ethan chuckled, not taking his eyes off the road. "And what, danced until the morning? Or whatever you city girls say." "Ethan, don't start." Lindsay rolled her eyes. "I was just taking a break. You should try it, you know. It's not all about building bridges." He gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. "I don't mind a vacation, Lindsay, but we have a kid, a house, bills. Someone has to keep everything under control while you relax." "Oh, really?" Her voice grew sharper. "So I'm a bad mother because I didn't spend 2 days in Omaha. Thanks for reminding me." "I didn't say that." Ethan looked at her, his eyes tired. "It's just, you came back, but it's like you're not here. What happened, Lindsay? Tell me, I'm your husband." Lindsay turned away, her throat tightening. "Tell him. About Justin, about his hand on her waist, about how she'd lied about finding herself." She couldn't. Not because she was afraid of his anger, but because he wouldn't understand. Ethan saw the world in black and white, family, work, duty. But Vegas was colorful, alive, and Lindsay didn't want him to sully her memories with his questions. "Nothing special," she said finally. "Just the city, Kelly, the music. You wouldn't like it." Ethan said nothing, and the silence in the car became almost palpable. Emily hummed a song in the back, oblivious to the tension. Lindsay glanced at her daughter in the rearview mirror, and her heart sank. Emily was her anchor, her light, but even she couldn't fill the void Lindsay had brought back from Vegas. At home, everything was the same. The kitchen with magnets on the fridge, the living room with toys scattered around, the smell of last night's dinner. Lindsay set her suitcase by the door, feeling the walls closing in. She remembered Kelly's suite, its windows overlooking the strip, and her own reflection in a silver dress. Here, in jeans and an old t-shirt, she was just Lindsay again, wife, mother, shadow of herself. Ethan turned on the TV, and Emily tugged at Lindsay's hand. "Mommy, tell me about the trip. Were there any princesses?" Lindsay knelt down, smiling, but her smile was strained. "Not exactly princesses, honey, but there were lots of lights, like in a fairy tale. Big houses, music." "Did you dance?" Emily clapped her hands. "Like in the cartoon?" "Yes, I did." Lindsay stroked her head, feeling a lump in her throat. She remembered Justin, his voice, "Don't let the fire go out." "But now I'm home with you." Emily nodded, satisfied, and ran off to her dolls. Lindsay stood up, feeling the fatigue wash over her like a wave. She wanted to unpack her suitcase, but instead she picked up her phone. Another text from Justin, a photo from the party where he was laughing, surrounded by people. "Miss your energy," he wrote. Lindsay smiled, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She was about to reply, but Ethan walked into the kitchen, and she quickly put the phone away. "Listen," he said, his voice softer but still guarded. "I was thinking, maybe we could go to that steakhouse on the corner tomorrow. Emily likes their fries, and, well, we could hang out, like we used to." Lindsay looked at him, and her stomach twisted. Steakhouse, French fries. It was so pathetic. After the Vegas restaurants where the waiters knew Kelly by name, after the $100 cocktails, this sounded like a joke. She remembered Justin talking about dreams, about living life to the fullest, and Ethan had suggested a steakhouse. "Maybe," she answered evasively, turning away to the sink. "I'm tired, Ethan. We'll decide later." He sighed, and Lindsay heard him go into the living room. She turned on the water, pretending to wash the dishes, but her mind was elsewhere. She remembered the club, the music, her reflection in the mirror of the suite. She had been different there, alive, desirable. Here, she was trapped again. Later, after Emily had fallen asleep, Lindsay sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Ethan was watching a documentary about bridges, and his voice, commenting on the engineering, was as irritating as a saw. She opened Justin's video again, and his energy bright, alive, struck her like an electric shock. She compared him to Ethan, sitting in an old sweater, and felt disgust. Not at him, but at herself, for allowing her life to become like this. "Lindsay," Ethan said suddenly, turning off the TV. "Let's talk. You're back, but you're not with us. What's going on? Is this about Vegas, or is this about me?" She clutched the phone, her fingers white. "Nothing's happening, Ethan. I'm just tired. Give me time, okay?" "Time?" He frowned. "Lindsay, I'm trying to understand. You left, came back, and now you look at me like I'm a stranger. If I'm doing something wrong, tell me. I want us to be a family." His words hit something deep inside, but not in the way he wanted. Family. The word sounded like a cage. She loved Emily, but being family with Ethan meant giving up the Lindsay she'd found in Vegas. "You're not doing anything wrong," she said quietly, standing up. "It's just, I don't know what I want. Good night." She went into the bedroom, leaving him alone. After closing the door, she opened Justin's texts and wrote, "You're right, Vegas is different. Thanks for the night." She hit send, feeling her old world crumble. Omaha was her home, but she wasn't there anymore. And as she lay in the dark, she realized she didn't want to go back to who she was. Lindsay was sitting in the kitchen, stirring Emily's oatmeal, when her phone vibrated softly on the counter. She glanced at the screen, and her lips twitched into a smile. A text from Justin. "Morning, gorgeous. Just got back from a tour in Leh. Vegas misses you." Lindsay quickly tucked the phone into her apron pocket, glancing around to see if Ethan had come in. The house was silent, except for Emily humming in the living room as she built a tower of blocks. But Lindsay felt like a spy, hiding a secret that could blow up her life. It had only been a month since her trip to Las Vegas, but it felt like another lifetime. Omaha had brought her back to her routine. Morning coffee, daycare for Emily, laundry, dinners with Ethan, who talked about bridges and bills. But now Justin was in her world, his texts, his videos from the studio, his voice that she played in her head as she drifted off to sleep. Every word from him was a spark, igniting a fire she was afraid to lose. "Mommy, is the porridge ready?" Emily called, and Lindsay winced, coming back to reality. "Yeah, honey, get a spoon," she said, spooning oatmeal into a unicorn bowl. She set the bowl down in front of Emily, but her mind was elsewhere. She pulled out her phone and texted Justin. "Sounds cool. Tell me about La." Her fingers shook like she was doing something forbidden. Ethan walked into the kitchen, dropping his briefcase by the door. His shirt smelled of dust and his face was tired, as it always was after work. Lindsay quickly put her phone away, but he noticed. "Who was that?" he asked, opening the refrigerator. His tone was casual, but Lindsay sensed suspicion. "Just something, Kelly," she lied, turning to the sink. "I was asking how you were doing." Ethan chuckled, reaching for his beer. "Kelly, then. You've been chatting with her a lot lately." Lindsay pressed her lips together, irritation simmering. She hated his tone, his questions, his look that seemed to say, "I know you're hiding something." But she couldn't tell him the truth. How could she explain that Justin's texts were her only connection to Lindsay, who danced in Vegas instead of washed dishes in Omaha? "She's my friend, Ethan," she said sharply. "Can't I talk to her?" "You can," he shrugged, but his eyes were cold. "You're just kind of different. Always on your phone. I'm not blind, Lindsay." She turned away, scraping the plate so hard the sponge squeaked. She wanted to scream that he had made her different, that his bridges and steakhouses were killing her. But instead she muttered, "You're imagining things. I'm just tired." Ethan said nothing, but his gaze burned into her back. Lindsay felt guilty, but that guilt only fueled her anger. Why should she have to justify wanting more? Justin didn't question her, didn't look at her like she was a criminal. He saw her as a woman, not a wife and mother. That afternoon, Lindsay began making excuses to get out of the house. She told Ethan she was going out for coffee with a friend, when in fact she was sitting in a cafe texting Justin. He sent a video from the studio, his tattooed hands moving across the console, his voice promising adventure. "La was crazy," he wrote. "Crowds, parties, but you know what was missing. You. Come to Vegas, Lindsay. I'll show you my life." Her heart began to pound. Go to Vegas. Again, she imagined herself with Justin in his world without bills and fairy tales. But then she remembered Emily, her curls, her questions, and Ethan, who, despite everything, was still her husband. Lindsay wrote, "Sounds good, but I have things to do. Tell me more." It was a cowardly excuse, but she wasn't ready to choose. That evening, she met Melissa, a friend from college, at a local coffee shop. Melissa was married with 2 kids, and her life mirrored the one Lindsay was running from. They sat at a table surrounded by the smell of espresso and freshly baked pastries, and Lindsay tried to listen to stories about school assemblies, but her phone kept vibrating. "Lindsay, are you even here?" Melissa frowned, sipping her latte. "You've been on your phone all evening. What's the secret?" Lindsay blushed, putting her phone away. "Nothing, it's just," Kelly texted, "from Vegas." "Vegas," Melissa rolled her eyes. "This trip of yours, look, I don't want to pry, but you came back, kind of. Weird. Ethan was complaining about you being off somewhere all the time." "Ethan complained?" Lindsay sat up straighter, her voice sharp. "Seriously, Melissa? He's telling everyone what a bad wife I am now?" "Not bad," Melissa held up her hands. "It's just, he's worried. And so am I. You're not alone, Lindsay. You have Emily, Ethan, a house, and you act like you're 20 and single. What was that in Vegas? Some guy?" Lindsay clutched her cup, feeling the blood rush to her cheeks. Melissa had hit the nail on the head, and it was angering her. She wanted to talk about Justin, about his words, about how he made her feel alive. But instead, she snapped. "No boyfriend, Melissa. Just a city that doesn't suffocate me like Omaha does. Did you ever think I might want more than mashed potatoes and a mortgage?" Melissa blinked, clearly hurt. "I'm not saying you should be happy behind the stove. But you have a family, Lindsay. If you're flirting with someone else, it's unfair. With Ethan, with Emily." "I'm not flirting," Lindsay said, but her voice was shaking. She stood up, throwing the money on the table. "I have to go. Thanks for the coffee." She left the cafe, tears stinging her eyes. Melissa was right, and that was what pissed her off the most. She wasn't just flirting, she was living a double life. One Lindsay as a wife and mother, and the other as a woman who dreamed of Vegas. And she didn't know how to reconcile the two. At home, Ethan was in the living room reading Emily a story. Lindsay walked past, avoiding his gaze, but he called out to her. Lindsay, can I talk to you for a minute? His voice was quiet but firm. She stopped, clutching the phone. What? He closed the book, sent Emily off to play, and walked up to her. I saw your phone this morning. You left it on the table. Who's Justin? Lindsay felt the floor shift beneath her. She opened her mouth, but the words stuck. Ethan looked at her, his eyes full of pain, and it was worse than anger. It's just a friend from Vegas, she managed. We were chatting, nothing serious. Nothing serious, Ethan raised his voice, but then lowered it, glancing at Emily. Lindsay, he's texting you like you're close. Do you think I'm an idiot? What's going on? Nothing's happening, she snapped, her voice shaking. You're going through my phone like I'm a criminal. Maybe you're the problem, Ethan. You're so busy building your bridges that you can't see how much I'm suffocating. Are you suffocating? He stepped closer, his face pale. I work so we have a home, so Emily doesn't want anything. And you? You run after some fantasies while I hold everything together. You are? Lindsay laughed, but it was bitter. You are keeping me in a cage, Ethan. I don't want your stability. I want to live. Emily ran in, her eyes frightened. Don't scream, she screamed, and Lindsay stopped, feeling tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, darling. She lowered herself to her daughter, hugging her. Everything's fine. Ethan looked at them, his face stony. We're not done, Lindsay, he said quietly and walked into the bedroom. Lindsay put Emily to bed, whispering a story to her, but her mind was elsewhere. She walked back to the kitchen, opened her phone, and saw a new text from Justin. Come over, Lindsay. I mean it. You were meant for more. She clutched the phone, feeling her world splitting. Omaha was her home, but Justin was her dream, and she knew she couldn't live in both worlds forever. Lindsay sat on the edge of her bed, clutching her phone so tightly her fingers ached. The screen glowed with a text from Justin. Lindsay, stop hiding. Come to Vegas for a week. I'll show you how to live for real. Are you ready? The words glowed like neon, each letter like a hammer, smashing her old life. Outside the bedroom door, she could hear the sounds of home. Emily humming in the living room, Ethan rattling dishes in the kitchen as he cooked dinner. Omaha slept under a gray November sky, but inside Lindsay, a storm was raging. It had been a month since she had started texting Justin, and every text was the oxygen she had been missing in the suburbs. He talked about touring, about crowds chanting his name, about parties where champagne flowed. And what did she have? Emily's cereal, the electric bills, Ethan, who eyed her suspiciously but said nothing. Lindsay knew she couldn't keep living like this, torn between the wife in Omaha and the woman she was in Vegas. Justin was offering her a choice, and she felt ready to make it. She stood up, her footsteps almost silent on the wooden floor. The woman reflected in the mirror had dark circles under her eyes, but there was determination in her gaze. Lindsay knew that today would change everything. She couldn't pretend anymore. In the living room, Emily sat on the rug, drawing with markers. Her curls fell over her face, her tongue lolling in effort. Lindsay paused, her heart clenching. Emily was her anchor, her joy, but even that love couldn't keep her caged in a marriage that was suffocating her. She walked into the kitchen, where Ethan was chopping onions for a casserole. The smell filled the air, so familiar, so suffocating. Ethan, her voice was quiet but firm. We need to talk. He froze, the knife hanging in the air. His eyes met hers, and there was something in them, fear, perhaps, or foreboding. He wiped his hands on a towel and turned to face her. What happened? He asked, his voice cautious. Is Emily okay? This isn't about Emily, Lindsay swallowed, feeling her throat go dry. This is about us. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan blinked, his face going pale, but he didn't scream, didn't plead, as she expected. He just looked at her, and the silence was worse than any scream. Divorce, he finally said, his voice hoarse. Lindsay, are you serious? After everything we had? After Emily? I'm unhappy, Ethan. She stepped forward, her hands shaking. I tried, I really did. But I can't do this anymore. This life, it's not mine. I'm suffocating. He clenched his fists, his gaze hardening. Are you choking? Is it my fault? I work, I try, I keep this house afloat. What else do you need, Lindsay? A spa? Travel? Or this Justin of yours? Her heart skipped a beat. He knew. Of course he knew. He hadn't asked since that fight over the phone, but his eyes had said it all. Lindsay sat up straight, refusing to back down. It's not about Justin, she lied, but her voice shook. It's about me. I want something different. Not you, not this house, not this routine. I want to live, Ethan, not exist. He laughed, but it was bitter, almost evil. Live? What, we don't live? We have a daughter, Lindsay, a home, a family, or does all this mean nothing to you? It means everything. Her voice broke, tears stung her eyes. But I can't be who you want. I don't want to be just a wife and mother. I want to be myself. Emily ran into the kitchen, her face scared. Mommy, Daddy, don't yell, she screamed, her eyes filling with tears. Why are you angry? Lindsay knelt down, hugging her daughter, but her hands were shaking. I'm sorry, honey, she whispered, holding Emily close. We're not mad. We're just talking. Emily sobbed into her shoulder. Are you going to leave again, like last time? Lindsay felt her heart break. She wanted to tell her that she would stay, that everything would be okay, but the words stuck. She couldn't lie to her daughter. Instead, she kissed her forehead and looked at Ethan. Let's try therapy, he said quietly, his voice almost pleading. Lindsay, we can fix this. For Emily, for us. I don't want to lose you. She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. This isn't about fixing you, Ethan. You're a good man, but you're not who I want. I want someone different, and I can't pretend that's going to change. Ethan looked at her, his face a mixture of pain and anger. So that's it. You're just going to leave us. For what? For some DJ who'll forget you in a month. Don't you dare, Lindsay snapped, standing up. This isn't about him. This is about me. I can't live your life anymore. She picked Emily up, comforting her, and laid her down in bed, whispering a story until her daughter fell asleep. But her own heart was pounding like a drum. She knew she had made a choice, and there was no going back. Lindsay packed a bag, a couple of jeans, a t-shirt, a makeup bag, and headed to her parents'. Ethan didn't stop her, but his disappointed gaze followed her the entire way. Her parents' house, a 10-minute drive away, was the same as it had been when she was a child. Floral wallpaper, the smell of apple pie, an old sofa with faded upholstery. But now it seemed foreign, like a set from the past. Her mother, Elaine, met her at the door, her lips pursed. Lindsay, what have you done? She asked, barely closing the door. Ethan called, said you want a divorce. Is that true? Lindsay dropped her bag on the floor, her shoulders slumping. Yes, Mom, I can't live like this anymore. Elaine crossed her arms, her eyes glittering. You can't. You have a daughter, Lindsay. Ethan's a good husband, reliable, works like a dog. What about you? Leaving your family for some stupid dream? This is Vegas, right? This Kelly and her crazy life? This isn't about Kelly, Lindsay clenched her fists. This is about me. I'm suffocating, Mom. I don't want to be you. I don't want to sacrifice everything for safety. I want to live. Living, Elaine snorted, her voice full of sarcasm. Living isn't about parties and dresses, Lindsay. Living is about raising a child, keeping a family together. You think I've always had it easy? I didn't chase fantasies, and neither should you. I'm not you, Lindsay screamed, her voice echoing through the house. And I don't want Emily to grow up with a mother who hates her life. Elaine paused, her face pale. You're selfish, Lindsay, she said finally, and you'll regret it. Lindsay turned away, tears choking her. She went into her old room where the posters from her teenage years still hung and collapsed on her bed. Her phone vibrated. Justin, are you okay? Thinking about my proposal, she didn't answer, but his words were a beacon in the darkness. The next morning, Lindsay found a lawyer online. Her name was Karen, and her voice on the phone was businesslike but warm. Lindsay sat in her car outside her parents' house, gripping the steering wheel as she explained. "I want a divorce," she said, her voice firm despite the trembling. "We have a daughter, a house. I don't know where to start." "Don't worry, Lindsay," Karen replied. "We'll figure it out. You need to decide what you want. Custody, child support, property. I'll get the paperwork done, but be prepared it can be difficult, especially with a child." "I'm ready," Lindsay lied, fear clenching her chest. "Just, let's get started." She hung up and looked at her parents' house, at the gray Omaha sky. Somewhere out there in Vegas, Justin was waiting for her, promising a life of light. But here was Emily, crying from her screams, and Ethan, whose pain was her fault. Lindsay closed her eyes, feeling her world split in two. She had made a choice, but the cost was higher than she expected. Lindsay sat on the old couch in her parents' living room, clutching a mug of cold tea. Outside, Omaha was engulfed in a gray November fog, and the house smelled of apple pie and tension. Her mother, Elaine, stood at the kitchen table, kneading dough furiously, as if every movement were an accusation. Her father, Richard, leafed through the newspaper, but his eyes kept sliding toward Lindsay, full of disappointment. She'd arrived here 2 days ago, after dropping the bombshell about the divorce, and since then, her parents' house had been the scene of silent reproaches and loud lectures. "Lindsay, do you even know what you're doing?" Elaine finally broke the silence, her voice as sharp as a knife. "You're destroying a family. Emily, Ethan, they deserve better than your selfish ways." Lindsay gripped her mug, her knuckles white. "Mom, I'm not selfish. I'm unhappy. Do you want me to live in a marriage where I'm dying inside?" "Unhappy?" Elaine snorted, throwing the dough down on the table. "Life isn't a fairy tale, Lindsay. Do you think I was always excited about doing laundry and cooking? I did it for you and your brother. Family is about sacrifice, not escaping to Las Vegas for some fantasy." "I'm not you." Lindsay looked up, her voice shaking with anger. "And I don't want Emily to see a mother who hates her life. That's not a sacrifice, that's a prison." Richard put the paper down, his face stern. "Lindsay, stop. Ethan's a good man. He works, he takes care of you. You think you'll find someone better? That DJ of yours? He'll dump you as soon as he finds a new toy." Lindsay winced when she heard about Justin. She hadn't told her parents about him, but gossip traveled like wildfire in Omaha. "It's not about him, Dad. It's about me. I want to live, not just exist." "Live?" Elaine rolled her eyes. "You'll regret it, Lindsay. When you're alone, without a family, without a home, don't come crying to us." Lindsay stood up, her tea spilling on the table. "Thank you for your support," she said, walking into her old room. She slammed the door, feeling tears stinging her eyes. Her parents saw her as a child who was being capricious, but they didn't understand how her soul was screaming in this gray routine. She took out her phone, opened Justin's messages. His last, "You are stronger than you think. Vegas is waiting." These words were like a life preserver, and Lindsay clung to them so as not to drown. The next day, she went to see her friend Melissa, hoping for understanding. But the cafe where they met became another scene of judgment. Melissa, with her neat haircut and pastel sweater, looked at Lindsay as if she were a sick child. "Lindsay, I don't mean to offend you, but divorce?" Melissa lowered her voice, looking around as if she was afraid someone would overhear them. "Ethan's in shock. He said you just left without any explanation. How can you leave Emily for, that guy from Vegas?" "I'm not leaving Emily," Lindsay snapped, clutching her latte. "And this isn't about the guy. This is about me. I was suffocating, Melissa. Have you ever felt like your life wasn't yours?" Melissa sighed, her eyes full of pity. "Sure, there are hard days. But I have kids, a husband, and a home. I don't chase dreams, Lindsay, and neither should you. Emily will suffer. And Ethan, he loves you." "Love me?" Lindsay laughed, but it was bitter. "He loves his version of me, the one who cooks dinner and nods at his stories about bridges. But he doesn't see the real me. Does this, Justin, see? Melissa narrowed her eyes. Lindsay, I heard you talking about Vegas. It's not real. It's a mirage. You'd destroy everything for what? Lindsay stood up, her cheeks burning. For myself, Melissa. And you know what? I'm tired of making excuses. She threw the money on the table and walked out, feeling the cafe closing in behind her. Her friends, her parents, this whole town, they were all pulling her back into the cage she was trying to escape. At home, Ethan was waiting for her in the living room. Emily was at his sister's, and the silence in the house was almost ominous. He was sitting on the couch, holding a mug of coffee, his eyes red, as if he hadn't slept. I talked to a lawyer, he said, his voice even but brittle. I'm not going to fight you, Lindsay. You want a divorce, fine. Your house, alimony, Emily's support, whatever you want. Just tell me why. Lindsay froze, guilt tightening in her chest. She had expected shouting, accusations, but not this quiet surrender. Ethan looked broken, and it was her fault. Because I can't be who you want me to be, she said quietly. You deserve someone who will be happy in this life. And I can't. He nodded, his gaze falling on the mug. I thought we were family, but apparently I was wrong. He stood up and walked into the bedroom, closing the door. Lindsay was left alone, feeling her heart breaking. She had made a choice, but it was like a knife cutting through everything she loved. That afternoon, she picked Emily up from daycare and took her to the park. Emily ran around the playground, her laughter ringing like a bell, but Lindsay felt like a ghost. She looked at her daughter, her curls bouncing in the wind, and wondered how she could explain to her that her mother was not leaving her, but searching for herself. Mommy, the swing, Emily called, and Lindsay came over, pushing her. Are you sad? Daddy said you were arguing. Lindsay swallowed. We're not fighting, honey. It's just, adults sometimes decide to live their lives differently. But I'll always be your mom, okay? Emily nodded, but her eyes were serious. Are you going to that city with lights? Lindsay froze, her hands stopping on the swing. I don't know, honey, but I'll always be with you, I promise. She was lying, and it burned her inside. She knew Vegas was calling her, and the call was stronger than her fear. Back home, Lindsay opened her laptop and bought a ticket to Las Vegas. The price made her wince again. It was money that could have gone toward a new bike for Emily, but she clicked confirm, her resolve eclipsing her guilt. She imagined herself in Vegas, with Justin, in a world where she wasn't just a mom or a wife, but a woman who glowed. She packed her suitcase, choosing clothes that would match the Lindsay she saw in the mirror of Kelly's suite. A black dress, heels, bright lipstick. Ethan didn't come out of the bedroom when she left, and his silence is louder than any words. Lindsay kissed Emily as she slept, leaving a note that read, I'll be back soon. Love you. She knew it was a lie, but she couldn't tell the truth. At the Omaha airport, she stood at the check-in counter, clutching her ticket. It was drizzling outside, and the city seemed as blurry as her past. Lindsay glanced at her phone, a text from Justin. Waiting for you, star. She smiled, but her heart was heavy. She was leaving Emily, Ethan, her parents, her friends, all who had judged her, but also all who had loved her. When the boarding call came, she stepped toward the plane, feeling Omaha letting go. Vegas lay ahead, a new life. Lindsay stepped onto the sidewalk of Las Vegas, and the city crashed over her like a wave. Neon signs blinked like stars, music blared from every corner, and the air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and cigarette smoke. She clutched the handle of her suitcase, her heels clicking on the pavement, her heart pounding with anticipation. Omaha was behind her, its gray streets, her parents' disapproving looks, the pain in Ethan's eyes. Here, under the bright lights of the strip, Lindsay felt new, like she had shed an old skin. Justin was waiting for her at the entrance to the hotel, a tall glass giant whose windows reflected neon. His dark hair was tousled, tattoos peeked out from under his black t-shirt, and his smile was the same one that had made her heart beat faster at the club. He stepped toward her, hugging her as if they hadn't seen each other in years, not weeks. "The star has arrived," he said, his voice low and slightly husky. "Vegas has been brighter since you showed up." Lindsay laughed, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "Do you always say that, or am I special?" "You're special," he winked, taking her suitcase. "Come on, I'll show you my life." They walked into the hotel, and Lindsay gasped. The lobby was like a palace. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a fountain gushing out of the center. Justin led her to the elevator, greeting the staff, who called him Mr. Justin. Lindsay felt like a movie heroine, but deep down, she was afraid. What if she didn't fit into this world? His 20th floor apartment was the epitome of luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the strip, leather couches, a backlit bar where bottles of whiskey cost more than her monthly salary. Lindsay set down her suitcase, afraid to touch anything for fear of leaving a mark. "So, how do you like it?" Justin hugged her from behind, his chin touching her shoulder. "This is your home while you're here." "This is incredible," Lindsay breathed, looking at the city lights. "How did you get used to this?" "I'm not used to it," he grinned, pouring wine. "I'm just living. And you will be too. Tonight, we're having dinner at the best restaurant, and then we'll go to the club. Ready to rock?" Lindsay nodded, but her smile was a little strained. She thought of Emily, her curls, her question. "Are you going to that city with lights?" Guilt pricked her, but Lindsay pushed the thought away. She was here to be herself, not an Omaha mom. The restaurant was like something out of a glossy magazine. White tablecloths, candles, waiters in black vests gliding silently. Justin ordered oysters, steak, a wine with a name Lindsay couldn't pronounce. She sat across from him in the black dress she'd bought before leaving, feeling both a celebrity and an imposter. "To you," Justin raised his glass, his eyes shining. "To choose life." Lindsay clinked her glasses with him, but her smile faltered. "To life," she echoed, sipping the wine. It was rich and rich, but it couldn't mask the shadow of guilt that followed her. At the restaurant, Justin was the center of attention. The waiters knew him by name, the couple at the next table asked for a photo, and a girl in a red dress walked by and said, "Justin, where have you been?" Lindsay smiled, but she felt like a decoration. She wanted to ask who the girl was, but she was afraid to seem petty. "Are you always this popular?" she asked, trying to sound playful. "It's the job," he shrugged, cutting into his steak. "People love DJs, but don't worry, I'm here with you." His words warmed her, but not for long. After dinner, they went to the club, the same one where they had met. The music was loud, the strobe lights were harsh, and the crowd parted for Justin as if he were a king. Lindsay followed him, her heels clicking on the floor, but she felt like a guest, not a mistress of this world. In the VIP area, a group of people were waiting for them. Two girls, Layla and Samantha, and a guy named Ryan, who called Justin boss. Layla, with long black hair and a nose ring, looked Lindsay over, as if assessing her. "This is Lindsay," Justin introduced, putting his arm around her waist. "My guest is from—" "Where are you from, Lindsay?" "Omaha," she answered, feeling the word sound ridiculous in this neon world. "Omaha?" Samantha, a blonde with perfect makeup, giggled. "Where, Iowa? God, how did you survive there?" Lindsay forced a smile, but her cheeks were burning. "It's in Nebraska," she said, trying not to sound offended. "It's just a different rhythm." "That's for sure," Layla narrowed her eyes, sipping her cocktail. "Vegas isn't for everyone. Gotta keep up the pace, you know." Justin laughed, but didn't intervene. Lindsay clutched her glass, feeling like an outsider. She wanted to be witty like Kelly, but her words were stuck. Justin went to the DJ booth to check the sound, leaving her with his friends. Layla and Samantha chatted about parties, designers, people Lindsay didn't know, their eyes sliding past her as if she were nothing. "So, Lindsay, what are you doing?" Ryan turned to her, his smile friendly but condescending. "Besides running away from Omaha." Lindsay hesitated. What could she say? That she was a mother? A housewife? I'm a designer, she lied, recalling her old sketches. Interiors, mostly. Cool, Ryan nodded, his interest waning. Vegas is a creative place, if you survive. Lindsay sipped her drink, tasting the bitterness. She looked at Justin, laughing at the console, surrounded by fans. He was the star, and she was a guest he had brought in for the week. The thought stung, but Lindsay pushed it aside, dancing with him when he returned. His hands on her waist, his smile, this was what she had given up everything for. The next day, Justin was busy. Meetings, the studio, calls. Lindsay stayed in his apartment, looking out the window at the strip. She felt like a princess in a tower without a king. Her phone was silent, no texts from her parents, no calls from Melissa. Omaha had turned its back on her, and it hurt more than she expected. She dialed Ethan's number to talk to Emily. His voice was cold, but he handed the phone to his daughter. Mommy, Emily's voice was clear but distant. Where are you? At Grandma's. No, honey, I'm on a trip. Lindsay swallowed, feeling a lump in her throat. How are you? What are you doing? Drawing. Emily giggled. Dad said you'd be back soon. Is that true? Lindsay closed her eyes, her heart clenching. Soon, honey. I love you. The conversation was short. Emily ran off to play, and Ethan hung up silently receiver. Lindsay stared at the phone, guilt eating away at her. She wanted to be with Emily, but Vegas was her chance, her dream. She couldn't give it up now. Justin came back late, tired, but with the same magnetic smile. Sorry, star, work, he said, kissing her. Tomorrow I'll show you the real Vegas. I promise. Lindsay stood by the picture window of Justin's apartment, watching Las Vegas come alive in the twilight. The neon lights of the strip flared one by one like stars born in the desert, and the city hummed below music, laughter, the clink of slot machines. But the apartment was quiet, almost echoing, and the silence weighed on her like a slab of concrete. Justin had left for a tour in San Francisco 2 days ago, leaving her with the promise of returning soon and the key to his world, which seemed increasingly alien. She turned, looking around the apartment. The black leather couch, the glass table, the bar stocked with bottles she was afraid to touch. Everything about it screamed Justin his style, his success, his life. But where was she in it? Lindsay, who had fled Omaha, abandoned her husband and daughter for a dream that now seemed like a mirage. She clutched her phone, checking her messages. Justin had written yesterday, San Francisco is on fire, star. Be back soon. But his words, so bright at first, now left an emptiness. Lindsay sank down on the couch, her jeans and t-shirt looking ridiculous against the backdrop of luxury. She opened social media, scrolling through Kelly's stories. She was at another party, in a dress that shimmered like mercury, holding a glass in her hand. Lindsay wrote to her, Kel, where are you? Bored alone. A minute later, she replied, at Layla's party. Come over, I'll send you the address. Don't sit at home like an old lady. Lindsay sighed, feeling a mixture of excitement and fear. Justin's friend, Layla, was one of those who looked at her as a temporary decoration. But Lindsay didn't want to be an old lady. She wanted to be a part of this world, to prove that she belonged. She put on the black dress she'd bought before leaving, applied makeup, trying to remember Kelly's lessons, and called a cab. The party was in a penthouse at the other end of the strip. The elevator opened onto a space full of light and sound. Huge windows, a pool on the terrace, a DJ spinning records in the corner. The guests women in dresses straight out of fashion magazines and men with watches that cost more than her car were laughing, dancing, drinking. Lindsay stepped inside, feeling her heels sink into the plush carpet. She looked for Kelly, but spotted Layla first, standing at the bar with Samantha. Oh, Lindsay, Layla raised an eyebrow, her black hair glinting under the chandelier. I didn't think you'd make it without Justin. Thinking of trying Vegas on your own? Lindsay forced a smile, clutching her purse. Yeah, Kelly called. Where is she? Somewhere around here, Samantha waved her hand, her drink splashing. But you didn't come for her, right? You're probably bored without Justin. Lindsay felt her cheeks heat up. "I'm not his shadow," she said, trying to sound confident. "I just want to have fun." "Well, have fun," Layla chuckled, her gaze cold. "Just keep up the pace, Omaha. Vegas is not for the weak." They turned away, still chatting, and Lindsay was alone at the bar. She ordered a drink, feeling invisible. Around her, the guests were talking about things she didn't understand: club deals, fashion brands, names that sounded like passwords. Lindsay drank, trying to look casual, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Omaha. She remembered the kitchen, where she'd made Emily's porridge, Ethan reading her stories. She was needed there, where she knew the rules. Here, she didn't belong. Kelly showed up half an hour later, her blonde hair shining like a halo. "Lindsay, there you are," she called, hugging her. "Why so sour? This is Vegas, baby." "Not sour," Lindsay tried to smile. "It's just, your friends aren't particularly happy to see me." Kelly rolled her eyes. "Layla and Samantha, they're like that with all the new kids. Never mind. You're with Justin, that's your ticket. Just be yourself, and they'll get used to it." "Be yourself?" Lindsay snorted, sipping her drink. "Kel, I don't even know who I am here. Without Justin, I'm nobody." "Nonsense," Kelly grabbed her arm. "You're Lindsay, who ran away from Omaha to pursue a dream. That already makes you cooler than half of these dolls. Let's go dancing, forget about them." They took to the dance floor, and Lindsay tried to lose herself in the music, like she had that night with Justin. But without his gaze, without his hands on her waist, she felt lost. The guests around her were dancing, laughing, and she was a shadow, moving between them. Layla passed by, throwing out, "Omaha, keep up!" And Lindsay clenched her fists, determined not to show weakness. She danced, drank, laughed louder than she should have, but there was a growing emptiness inside. Vegas was bright but cold, and without Justin, the light was no warmth. Lindsay left the party early, calling a cab, and returned to her apartment, where the silence settled over her like a blanket again. In the morning, her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. She opened it with bated breath. A photo of Emily at a preschool party, wearing a dress with butterflies and a paper crown. She smiled, holding up a drawing. The caption read, "She misses you." Lindsay stared at the photo, tears stinging her eyes. Emily was so far away, and it was her fault. She wanted to call, but what could she say? That she was in Vegas, dancing at parties while her daughter performed without her. She dialed the number, but Ethan answered first. "Lindsay," his voice was cold as ice. "Emily's asleep. What do you need?" "I wanted to talk to her," Lindsay swallowed. "How is she?" "What?" He snorted. "She asks where her mother is, and I don't know what to say. You're in Vegas, right? Living your dream?" "Ethan, don't." Her voice wavered. "I didn't leave her. I just—" "Just what?" He interrupted. "Forgot you have a daughter. Lindsay, come back before it's too late. Or do you really think this DJ of yours will replace your family?" She hung up, tears rolling down her cheeks. Ethan was right, and it was killing her. But going back to Omaha meant giving in, admitting she was wrong. She couldn't. She wiped her tears away, looking at Streep. Justin would come back, and everything would be better. She had to be stronger, more independent. Lindsay lay on the king-size bed in Justin's apartment, staring at the ceiling, where the lights of Las Vegas shone through the curtains. It was 2 in the morning, but sleep wouldn't come. The silence in the apartment was almost palpable, broken only by the distant hum of the strip below. Justin was somewhere again, in the studio, he'd said when he left after dinner. Lindsay rolled over on her side, clutching her phone, her only link to the world she'd left behind, and the one she'd tried to make her own. It had been a month since she had come to Vegas, leaving Omaha, Ethan, the life she knew. The first weeks had been like a fairy tale: restaurants with views of the fountains, clubs where Justin was a star, his hands on her waist, his words promising her the world. But now the fairy tale was falling apart. Justin was disappearing more and more often, touring the studio, meetings leaving her alone in this glass tower, where she felt more like a prisoner than a queen. She opened her phone, scrolling through their text messages. Justin's last text was yesterday. Star, busy till tonight. See you tomorrow. Lindsay had written, "Where are you? Miss you." But there was no response. She scrolled up to his older texts. "You were made for Vegas. You're my muse." The words had warmed her then, but now they seemed empty. She noticed that he often left her texts unanswered, but his social media stories were full of life. Parties, crowds, girls smiling next to him. Lindsay clutched her phone, feeling the suspicions she'd been pushing away return. Her thoughts were interrupted by the image of Emily, her curls, her ringing laugh. Lindsay missed her daughter so much it was physically painful. She remembered their last call, Emily asking when her mother would be home, and Lindsay lying that soon. Soon. The word became her shield, but it couldn't hide the truth. She didn't know when she would be home, or if she would be home at all. Lindsay stood, pulled on her robe, and went to the window. The strip sparkled like a Christmas tree, but its light didn't reach her. She thought of Omaha, the kitchen where Emily cooked porridge, Ethan reading her stories. She was needed there, where she knew her place. Here she was a shadow following Justin, and the shadow was growing thinner. In the morning, Justin returned, his footsteps waking her. He threw his jacket on the couch, smelling of cigarettes and cologne, and smiled as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, Star," he said, leaning down to kiss her. "You're up early." Lindsay pulled away, her gaze falling on his phone lying on the table. "Where have you been?" she asked, trying to sound calm. "Study until the morning again?" "Yeah," he shrugged, opening the fridge. "Work never sleeps, you know. Want some coffee?" "Justin," her voice sharpened. "I saw your stories. You were at a party. Who were you with?" He froze, his smile tight. "Lindsay, relax. It's just a party, part of the job. People, music, business. What kind of interrogation is this?" "This isn't an interrogation." She stood up, her hands shaking. "You're always somewhere, and I'm sitting here alone. And those girls in your videos, who are they? Do you text them?" Justin rolled his eyes, his expression hardening. "Seriously, Lindsay? You're going to check my phone now? I thought you were cooler than that. This is Vegas. Everyone hangs out and socializes. Don't be so pushy." Obsessive, her voice broke, tears stung her eyes. "I gave up everything for you. My home, my daughter, my life, and you. You can't even be honest." Left. He stepped closer, his voice cold. "You chose Vegas, Lindsay. I didn't make you. If you want to live my life, keep up the pace. And if you can't, no one's holding you back." His words hit her like a slap in the face. Lindsay looked at him, feeling the ground slipping out from under her. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but fear stopped her. Fear that he was right, that she couldn't cope, that she had lost everything to a man who saw her as nothing more than a temporary distraction. I just want to know where we are," she said quietly, her voice shaking. "I thought we were together." Justin sighed, his gaze softening. "We're together, Star, but I'm not the kind of person who sits at home. I have tours, projects, and a life. If you want to be with me, be prepared for this, okay?" She nodded, but inside she was screaming. He went to take a shower, and Lindsay was left alone, feeling stupid. She opened his stories again, seeing the same girl, a brunette in a gold dress, laughing next to him. Lindsay knew it wasn't just business, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. Not now that she'd burned all her bridges. That afternoon, she met Kelly at a cafe on the Strip. Kelly, in sunglasses and a dress straight out of a fashion magazine, looked as flawless as ever. Lindsay, in jeans and a t-shirt, felt like a pale shadow. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," Kelly frowned, sipping her mojito. "What happened? Is Justin disappearing again?" Lindsay nodded, fiddling with her napkin. I saw his messages, Kel, and his stories. There's a lot of girls there. I asked, but he called me clingy." Kelly sighed, taking off her glasses. "Lindsay, I warned you. Justin is not the monogamous type. He's a star. There's always a crowd around him. This is Vegas. This is how life is. If you want to be with him, you have to accept the rules. Rules? Lindsay snorted, her eyes shining. I left my daughter for him, Kelly, and he won't even try to be with me. Then why are you here? Kelly looked at her, her voice hard. You knew what you were getting into. Justin won't change. Either play by his rules or go back to Omaha. But don't complain that the dream isn't what you wanted. Lindsay was silent, feeling Kelly's words cut her. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. Kelly was right. She chose Vegas, she chose Justin, and now she had to live with it. But the price was getting higher. That evening, she called Emily, unable to bear the sadness any longer. Ethan answered, his voice cold as the winter wind. She was waiting for your call, he said, handing over the phone. Mommy, Emily's voice was so bright that Lindsay felt tears welling up. Where are you? When will you be back? Soon, honey, Lindsay lied, her voice shaking. I'm in the city with lights, remember? How are you? Good, Emily giggled. I drew a cat. Dad said you'd see it when you came. Are you coming? Lindsay closed her eyes, clutching her phone. Of course, honey. Soon. I love you. She hung up, guilt ripping through her. Emily was her heart, but Vegas was her dream, and Lindsay couldn't give it up. She remembered Omaha, her kitchen, her routine, and shuddered. Going back meant defeat, an admission that her parents and Melissa were right. She couldn't let that happen. Lindsay looked out at the lights of the strip, clenching her fists. Justin would come back, and she would prove she belonged in this world. She would stay for her dream, even if it turned into a nightmare. She texted Justin, I'm with you, waiting. But there was no answer, and in the quiet of the apartment, the shadows of the past grew thicker. Lindsay sat on the leather couch in Justin's apartment, her fingers shaking as she scrolled through his social media stories. The screen of her phone glowed like Vegas neon, but instead of the usual euphoria, she felt her heart sink. The video showed Justin at a party, his tattooed hands holding a glass, and next to him stood a girl in a gold dress, the same brunette Lindsay had seen before. She was laughing, touching his shoulder, and their closeness was so obvious that Lindsay gasped. The caption read, "The night is just beginning." It wasn't business, it wasn't work. It was the truth she was afraid to admit. She threw the phone on the couch, her breathing ragged. The apartment, with its picture windows and crystal glasses, suddenly felt like a cage, beautiful but empty. Las Vegas glittered outside, but its light didn't reach her. Lindsay thought of Omaha, Emily, Ethan, and the pain of what she'd left mixed with the humiliation of what she'd gotten in return. She grabbed the phone and dialed Kelly, her voice shaking as she answered. Kel, I saw his stories, Lindsay blurted out without greeting him. That girl, who is she? Is Justin with her? Tell the truth. Kelly sighed, her voice tired but honest. Lindsay, I tried to warn you. Justin isn't with just one. He dates a lot of girls, models, singers, whatever. That's his style. You're just one of many. Lindsay felt the blood drain from her face. One of many? Her voice broke. Kelly, I gave up everything for him. My daughter, my home, and he's just playing. This is Vegas, Lindsay, Kelly said softly, but her words cut like a knife. No one here promises you lasting love. Justin isn't lying. He's just like that. You wanted a dream, and here it is. But it's not free. Lindsay hung up, unable to listen any longer. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but her anger was stronger. She remembered Justin calling her a star, promising her the world, his hands touching her at the club. It was all a lie, and she was stupid enough to believe it. She stood, her footsteps echoing in the empty apartment, and began gathering her things, jeans, dresses, the makeup she'd bought to fit in. Each item was a reminder of her naivety. Justin returned an hour later, his jacket smelling of cigarettes and someone else's perfume. He smiled as if nothing had happened, but his smile faded when he saw her suitcase at the door. Hey, Star, what's up? He asked, throwing the keys on the table. Where are you going? Lindsay turned to him, her eyes shining. I saw your stories, Justin. That girl. And Kelly told me everything. How many do you have? How many like me? He rolled his eyes, his expression hardening. Lindsay, don't make a scene. This is Vegas. Everyone hangs out here. I never promised you exclusivity. You made up some kind of romance. Invented it. Her voice broke, tears flowed. I abandoned my daughter for you, my marriage, my life, and you. You were just having fun. You left them for yourself. He stepped closer, his voice cold. Don't blame it on me. You wanted Vegas. I gave it to you. But I'm not your husband, Lindsay. I'm not the kind of person who sits at home and holds your hand. His words were like a blow. Lindsay looked at him, feeling her world crumble. She remembered their first night, his words, "You deserve more." Now they sounded like a taunt. She was not a star, but another toy that he would throw away as soon as he got tired of her. You're right, she said quietly, her voice empty. You're not my husband, and I was an idiot to think you cared. She grabbed the suitcase, but Justin stopped her, his hand on her wrist. Lindsay, don't be dramatic. Stay and have fun. Forget about it. Forget it? She pulled her hand away, her eyes flashing. Go to your brunette, Justin. I'm done. She slammed the door and went down into the elevator, tears choking her. Vegas was just as bright outside, but now it seemed fake, like the set of a cheap show. Lindsay called a cab and took him to a motel on the outskirts, a cheap one with a neon sign flashing the letter L. The room smelled damp, but she was too broken to care. Lying on the creaky bed, Lindsay closed her eyes, and the memories came flooding back. Her wedding to Ethan 4 years ago. She stood there in a white dress, her hair in soft waves, and Ethan looked at her like she was a miracle. His vows had been simple but sincere. I will love you, Lindsay, every day, no matter what. She'd believed him then, believed that their love would endure. They'd danced to an old song, laughed, and the world had seemed full of possibilities. But then came routine, and the mortgage, and Emily, and their love had drowned in the grayness of Omaha. Lindsay had run away, thinking she'd find something better, but now she lay alone in a motel, heartbroken. She remembered Emily, her curls, her question, "When are you coming back?" Lindsay felt like the worst mother in the world. She had abandoned her daughter for a man who saw her as nothing more than entertainment. She had been stupid, naive, and the realization burned her like acid. Lindsay opened her phone, her fingers shaking as she searched for flights. Vegas was no longer her home. She found a flight to Omaha for the morning, the cheapest one, and bought it, feeling a mixture of determination and humiliation. She was going back not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. Justin was a mirage, and her dream a lie she had paid too dearly for. She wrote to Kelly, "I'm leaving. You were right." A minute later, she wrote back, "Sorry, friend. Call me if anything happens." But Lindsay didn't want to talk. She wanted to disappear, to erase this month, this pain. She looked at the suitcase full of dresses she would never wear again and felt her heart shrink. Vegas promised her stars, but gave her only ashes. Lindsay lay down, staring at the ceiling, where the shadows of the neon sign danced like ghosts. She was going back to Omaha, but she knew there was no escape. She had lost everything: Ethan, Emily, herself, and now she had to pick up the pieces, even if they cut into her hands. Lindsay stepped off the plane at Omaha Airport, and the cold November wind hit her like a slap in the face. The sky was gray, low clouds clinging to the roofs of the terminals, and the air smelled of wet asphalt and diesel. She clutched the handle of her suitcase, the same one that had carried her to Las Vegas a month earlier with hopes of a new life. It was heavier now, filled with dresses she would never wear again and the weight of her mistakes. Vegas was behind her, its neon lights, its false promises, Justin, whose smile had been a trap. But Omaha didn't feel like home. It was ashes, and Lindsay had returned to pick up the pieces. She walked through the terminal, her footsteps echoing in the empty hall. No one was there to greet her, not Ethan, not her parents, not her friends. She called a cab and drove to her house, which now seemed foreign. The streets of Omaha flashed past the window. Bungalows, bare trees, supermarket signs. Everything was the same, but Lindsay looked at the city as if it were an old photograph with her face cut out. The house greeted her with silence. The kitchen smelled of dust, and the fridge magnets with photos of her, Ethan, and Emily felt like an accusation. Lindsay dropped her suitcase by the door and sank onto the couch, feeling a wave of fatigue wash over her. She pulled out her phone, but the screen was blank, no messages from Kelly, no calls from her parents. Just one notification, a social media post from Melissa, a photo from a family dinner. Lindsay wanted to close the app, but her gaze caught on another photo Ethan, smiling next to a woman. Caitlin, Emily's preschool teacher, with soft blonde hair and a warm smile. They were holding hands, and the caption read, "Happy together." Lindsay felt her heart clench. Ethan had moved on, and she was stuck in the past. The door creaked, and her mother, Elaine, walked in, holding a container of food. Her lips were pursed, and her eyes were a mixture of pity and reproach. "Lindsay, you're back," she said, setting the container on the table. "I bought lasagna. Have you ever eaten anything normal in this Vegas of yours?" "Thank you, Mom." Lindsay forced a smile, but her voice was empty. "I'm fine." "Okay?" Elaine crossed her arms. "You look like a ghost. And this house of yours, empty, like your decisions. Your father and I warned you, Lindsay, but you didn't listen. So what now? Where's your DJ? Where's your dream?" Lindsay clenched her fists, her cheeks burning. "Mom, please. I know I screwed up. Don't tell me that again." "Someone has to." Elaine lowered her voice, but it was sharp as a knife. "Emily's crying for you, Ethan's found someone else, and you came back empty-handed. What are you going to do, Lindsay? Live on alimony and feel sorry for yourself?" "I'll figure it out," Lindsay snapped, standing up. "I'm not a child, Mom. Give me time." Elaine sighed, her gaze softening but still reproachful. "We'll always be here for you, Lindsay, but you have to understand that family isn't a toy to be dropped and picked up." She walked away, leaving behind the lasagna and a silence that was louder than her words. Lindsay opened the container, but she didn't feel like eating. She turned on the TV, but the weather report and pizza commercials only made her feel more alone. She scrolled through her phone, and her fingers, out of habit, found Justin's profile. His stories were full of life. Him at a club with the same brunette, his smile bright, as if Lindsay had never existed. She felt tears stinging her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Justin was a mirage, and she was stupid enough to run after him. The next day, Lindsay went to Ethan's to see Emily. He lived in an apartment across town, small but cozy, with children's drawings on the walls. Emily rushed to her, hugging her knees. "Mommy," she cried, her curls bouncing. "You're back." Lindsay held her daughter close, breathing in her scent, feeling her heart break. "Yes, honey, I'm here." Ethan stood in the doorway, his face set in stone. Next to him was Caitlin, with a warm smile and soft eyes. She held a tray of cookies as if this was her home, her family. "Lindsay," Ethan said, his voice cold. "Emily was waiting for you. But don't make a scene, okay? She's having a hard enough time as it is." "I'm not going to." Lindsay straightened, her gaze sliding to Caitlin. "Hi, you must be Caitlin." "Yes," Caitlin smiled, but her eyes were wary. "It's good to see you. Emily talks a lot about you." Lindsay nodded, feeling envy and pain mingle in her chest. Caitlin was everything she wasn't. Soft, caring, happy in this simple life. Emily tugged at her hand, showing her a drawing of a cat, and Lindsay tried to smile, but her mind was elsewhere. She saw Caitlin whisper something to Ethan, and he smiled at her, and it hurt more than she expected. "Mommy, will you stay?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with hope. "Not today, honey," Lindsay stroked her head. "But I'll see you soon, I promise." Ethan walked her to the door, his eyes hard. "Lindsay, what are you going to do?" he asked quietly. "Emily needs stability. If you can't be a mother, tell me." "I can," she snapped, but her voice was shaking. "Just give me time, Ethan." He nodded but didn't answer. Lindsay walked away, feeling her world narrow to a point of pain. Emily, Ethan, Caitlin, they were all moving on, and she was frozen in the past. Back home, Lindsay found a part-time job through an ad, office administrator at a local insurance company. The job was boring, answering phones, filling out forms, smiling at customers complaining about their insurance. Her co-worker, Martha, a woman with a tired voice and the smell of cigarettes, showed her how to use the system. "Just do what you're told and you'll be fine," Martha said, chewing gum. "This isn't Vegas, there's no tricks." Lindsay nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She sat at her desk, staring at the gray monitor, feeling the Omaha routine pull her back in. On her lunch break, she opened her social media and saw a new photo of Ethan and Caitlin at the park, with Emily on the carousel, all smiles. Lindsay closed the app, but the image remained like a burn. Ethan was happy, and she was the odd one out. That evening, she returned to a house that felt foreign. She turned on the light, but it only emphasized the emptiness. Lindsay opened her suitcase, taking out the dress from Vegas, silver and shimmering. She held it, remembering that night with Justin, and the tears flowed. She scrolled through his profile, seeing him with a new girl, and the pain was unbearable. Vegas was a mirage, and Omaha was reality, but none of them were her home. Lindsay lay on the couch, clutching her phone. She wanted to call Emily, but she was afraid to hear Caitlin's voice. Her parents, her friends, they all looked at her reproachfully, and she couldn't answer. She was alone, surrounded by ashes, and she knew she had started this fire. Lindsay stood at the entrance to the preschool auditorium, clutching her purse as parents chatted and took pictures of their children. The room was decorated with paper snowflakes, and tinsel. Emily's Christmas party was in full swing. Lindsay made her way to the back, her coat catching on the folding chairs, her heart pounding. She looked for Emily, but her eyes fell on Ethan and Caitlin, sitting in the front row. Ethan held the camera, filming the scene, and Caitlin whispered to him, her blonde hair shining in the spotlight. They looked like family, and Lindsay felt like an outsider in her daughter's life. Emily appeared on stage dressed as a snowflake, her curls bouncing under a cardboard crown. She sang Jingle Bells, waving her arms, and Lindsay smiled, but it was a bitter smile. Emily noticed her and waved, but then turned to Caitlin, shouting, "Katie, look!" Lindsay froze, feeling the word Katie cut her like a knife. Emily called Caitlin Katie, and it was worse than any rebuke she could get from her parents or friends. Lindsay became the weekend mom, and Caitlin took her place. After the party, Lindsay walked up to Emily, who was hugging Caitlin, showing her her drawing. Ethan stood nearby, his eyes wary but not angry. "Mommy!" Emily rushed toward Lindsay, her crown slanted to one side. "Did you see? I sang the loudest." "You were a star, honey." Lindsay knelt down, hugging her daughter. "I'm so proud of you." "Katie helped me learn the song," Emily smiled, looking at Caitlin. "She makes hot cocoa with marshmallows, just like you." Lindsay forced a smile, but her chest tightened. "Great," she said, standing up. "Thanks, Caitlin." "You're welcome," Caitlin smiled, her voice as soft as her eyes. "Emily is so talented. She told me you like to draw. Maybe you could draw together sometime." Lindsay nodded, but her cheeks were burning. Caitlin was kind, too kind, and that made her even more insufferable. She was everything Lindsay had failed to be, patient, warm, happy in this simple life. "Lindsay," Ethan coughed, his voice quiet. "Emily is staying with us tonight, but you can have her tomorrow if you want." "Okay," Lindsay swallowed, avoiding his eyes. "See you later, sweetheart." She kissed Emily and walked away, feeling their gazes burning into her back. She was a mother, but in this room, in this life, she was a shadow. Back in her empty house, Lindsay turned on the light, but it only emphasized her loneliness. The kitchen smelled of dust. The magnets on the fridge were ghosts of the past. She opened her laptop to distract herself, but her fingers, out of habit, found social media. A mistake. Justin's post hit her like lightning. Him on his knee with a ring in front of that brunette in the gold dress. Engagement. The caption, "She said yes." Lindsay stared at the photo, feeling her world crumble again. Justin, who called her a star, who promised her Vegas, was now building a life with someone else. She was nothing to him, and he was her everything. She slammed her laptop shut, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Vegas had been a mirage, but its shadow haunted her, reminding her how foolish she had been to believe in a dream. Lindsay wanted to delete him from social media, but she couldn't. She scrolled through his profile, seeing him with a model young, beautiful, confident, and each photo was a sting. She'd lost everything for him, and he hadn't even remembered her. The next day, Lindsay went to work at an insurance office, where she answered phones and sorted papers. Her co-worker, Martha, chewed gum and talked about her son, who had failed an exam. "Life is stressful," Martha grumbled, looking at Lindsay. "Why are you so gloomy? Are you dreaming about Vegas again?" "No," Lindsay shook her head, her voice empty. "It's just a rough day." "Well, hold on," Marta shrugged. "At least you have a child. My friend is alone at your age, and no one will take her. Be grateful for what you have." Lindsay nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Grateful. For what? For a home that felt foreign. For a daughter who called another Katie. She hated this routine, but she didn't know how to break free. That evening, she met Melissa at a cafe, hoping for support. But the conversation, as always, veered toward pity. Melissa, in a sweater with deer, looked at her with a sympathy that Lindsay hated. "You're doing great, Lindsay," Melissa said, sipping her latte. "But I heard about Ethan and Caitlin. They're so happy. Emily adores her. Maybe you should, try moving on." "Move on," Lindsay snorted, her fingers tightening around her cup. "Melissa, my daughter, calls her Katie. And I'm nobody. How am I supposed to move on when I've lost everything?" "Not everything," Melissa lowered her voice. "You have Emily, your job, your home. Maybe you should try dating someone. My coworker, Paul, he's a nice guy. I can introduce you." Lindsay shook her head, her eyes shining. "I'm not ready, Melissa. After Vegas, I can't trust anyone." "I understand," Melissa sighed, her eyes full of pity. "But you can't live in the past forever, Lindsay. Ethan found happiness, and so can you." Lindsay stood up, throwing her money on the table. "Thanks for the coffee," she said, her voice cold. "I have to go." She walked out, tears choking her. Melissa wanted to help, but her words were like salt in the wound. Lindsay tried to move on. She went on a date with a guy from the office, but his talk of football and pizza reminded her of Ethan. His eyes reminded her of Justin, and she ran away without saying goodbye. She couldn't trust, couldn't forget how her heart was broken twice. At home, Lindsay sat on the couch, scrolling through social media. A photo of Ethan and Caitlin at a school event, making a snowman with Emily, everyone laughing. Lindsay watched, feeling envy and pain mingle in her chest. Emily was happy, but without her. She opened Justin's profile, seeing him with his fiancée, and the pain became unbearable. She wanted to delete it, but she couldn't. Vegas was her mistake, but it was a part of her. Lindsay lay there, staring at the ceiling. She was a shadow in Emily's life, a shadow in Omaha, a shadow of herself. She had lost her role as a mother, her role as a wife, her role as a dreamer. Why? Lindsay sat at her desk in the insurance office, staring at her computer screen, where a cursor blinked on a blank document. The phone was ringing, customers were grumbling about insurance, and her coworker Martha was chewing gum, telling her about discounts at the supermarket. Outside, Omaha was drowning in winter gloom. Bare trees, gray snow on the sidewalks, street lights dim at 5 in the evening. Lindsay was 28, but she felt older, as if time had frozen her in the past, while the world around her moved on. It had been a year since she had returned from Las Vegas, a year since her dream of a bright life had been shattered by reality. She had returned to Omaha, to the house she had inherited in the divorce, but it was empty. No Emily, no Ethan, no heat. Lindsay worked, paid bills, collected child support, but every day was a copy of the last, like an endless gray conveyor belt. She was frozen, like a fly in amber, and she didn't know how to escape. Her phone vibrated, and Lindsay jumped. A message from Melissa. Lindsay, did you see? Ethan and Caitlin got married. The pictures are so beautiful. Lindsay opened her social media, even though she knew it was a mistake. Photos of Ethan and Caitlin's wedding filled her feed. Ethan in a dark suit, Caitlin in a white dress, their smiles shining like the sun. And in the center was Emily in a pink flower girl dress, holding a basket of petals, her curls bouncing, her eyes shining with happiness. Lindsay looked at her daughter, feeling her heart break. Emily was happy, but not with her. She closed the app, but the image remained. Emily called Caitlin Katie, spending more time with her than Lindsay. Last week, when Lindsay had taken her for the weekend, Emily had chatted about how Katie had taught her how to make bracelets and bake cupcakes. "You can do that too, Mommy," Emily had said, but her innocent words were a jab. Lindsay was the weekend mom, and Caitlin was the one who was there every day. That evening, when Lindsay returned home, she turned on the light, but it only emphasized the emptiness. The kitchen was cold, the refrigerator almost empty except for yogurt and leftover pizza. She took out a bottle of wine, poured a glass, and sat on the couch, looking at the magnets with photos of her, Ethan, and Emily on a picnic. They had been a family then. Now Ethan was building a new family, and Lindsay was alone. Her phone vibrated again, a call from Elaine, her mother. Lindsay wanted to ignore it, but she knew it was useless. She answered, holding the phone to her ear. "Lindsay, did you see the wedding?" Elaine's voice was soft, but with the usual reproach. "Emily was so beautiful. Caitlin takes such good care of her. Are you okay?" "Yes, Mom," Lindsay lied, sipping her wine. "I'm happy for them." "Happy?" Elaine sighed. "Lindsay, I don't want to upset you, but you have to move on. Ethan has found happiness, and you're still clinging to the past. Maybe you should go back to church or see a therapist. You can't live like this forever." "I'm not clinging," Lindsay snapped, her voice sharp. "And I don't need a therapist, Mom. I'll figure this out." "Can you figure it out?" Elaine lowered her voice. "You came back from Vegas a year ago, and what? You work in this office, you live alone, Emily sees you once a week. That's not living, Lindsay. That's running away." Lindsay clutched her glass, her cheeks burning. "Thanks for the lecture, Mom. I have to go." She hung up, tears stinging her eyes. Elaine was right, but Lindsay couldn't admit it. Admitting it meant giving everyone her parents, Melissa, Ethan, the right to say, "We told you so." She couldn't bear their judgment, their pity. She opened social media, despite the pain it brought. Her fingers found Justin's profile, as if out of habit. He was nominated for a music award. Photos of him and his fiancée, the brunette in the gold dress, filled his feed. They lived in Los Angeles, in a house overlooking the ocean, and his smile was the same one that had once captivated Lindsay. She looked at him, feeling an old wound opening. Justin was thriving, his dream had come true, and hers was crumbling to dust. Lindsay wanted to delete it, to block it, but her hand froze. Vegas had been her mistake, but it was a part of her, the Lindsay who had taken a chance, who wanted more. She closed the app, but the image remained, a shadow following her. The next day, she took Emily for the weekend. They went to the park, where Emily ran around in the snow, making a snowman. Lindsay sat on a bench, looking at her daughter, her heart aching with love and pain. "Mommy, look!" Emily shouted, holding up the crooked snowman. "Katie says he has to have a scarf. Do you have one?" Lindsay smiled, but her chest tightened. "No, honey, but we'll find a branch. It'll make a cool snowman." She moved to help Emily, but her mind was elsewhere. Katie. The word was a thorn in her side, reminding her that she was no longer the most important person in her daughter's life. "Mommy, will you come to my birthday?" Emily asked, her eyes shining. Katie promised a unicorn cake. "Of course, honey," Lindsay patted her head. "I won't miss it." But when she handed Emily back to Ethan, Caitlin greeted them with a smile, holding a tray of cookies. Emily rushed toward her, shouting, "Katie!" Lindsay stood in the doorway, feeling left out. Ethan looked at her, his gaze soft but distant. "Thanks for bringing her," he said. "Call me if anything happens." Lindsay nodded, walking away. She wouldn't call. She didn't know how to be part of their world, where Caitlin was the sun and she was the shadow. That evening, Melissa asked her out for coffee again, but Lindsay declined. She couldn't bear another conversation about moving on. Instead, she sat at home, scrolling through old photos on her phone. Her and Emily in the park, her and Ethan at the wedding. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. She was too tired, too empty. Lindsay went to the window, looking out at Omaha. The street was quiet, the streetlights casting yellow spots on the snow. She thought of Vegas, its neon, its promises, and Omaha, its routine, its reproaches. She had lost both worlds, but somewhere deep inside, a thought stirred. What if there was a chance to start over? Not in Vegas, not with Ethan, but with herself. She could go back to design, find a new home, be the mother Emily deserved. But the thought was weak, like a flame in a storm, and Lindsay didn't know if she had the strength to fan it. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass, her breath staining the window. Omaha watched her, silent and uncaring. Lindsay was frozen, but somewhere out there, over the horizon, was a chance small, fragile, but hers. She didn't know if she'd take it, but for the first time in a year, she thought maybe she should try. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.